when an organization wants to set out on the journey to do an ERP system, they don't realize, as Alisdair said, they don't realize the commitment that's required to do it.
Yeah.
Their people are all busy being busy, right? Now by the way, they've got a business to run. Their business as usual. Now your SI, your partner, comes in, and their business as usual is doing that implementation. So they're running at speed, and the business is back here. The relationship gets frayed, to be the polite word. Everybody starts swearing at each other, and it's all everybody's fault, But then the SI will either slow down, very often not. It's change control, land and expand. We'll give you more people. We'll do the data for you. So we're doing it for you. No one's going to learn if the SI is doing it for you.
Thanks so much for joining another edition of the Never-Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Today, we've got the pleasure of being joined by Alisdair and Paul, the Dragons of ERP, absolute disruptors. And if you are in trouble, I know that you can call them and find a friend that'll help you out of it. If you've ever heard of the 3 a.m. friend example of, come, I need your hand and bring your truck, that's the two of them when you're dealing with ERP. And Paul focuses on strategy, and Alisdair digs deep into the hard stuff that other people run away from. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Perfect.
Coordinated as usual.
Coordinated as usual. So I know that the two of you really dig into helping organizations get the most out of their SAP investment, maximizing their return on investment in SAP. Can you share a little bit more about that, and then how that translates into what sometimes feels like an epiphany for some organizations or some individuals in organizations that start to realize just how complex this really is?
The perception is it's complex, but it's not. It's like we talk about in the initial stages, your mom and pop store. You don't need an ERP system if you've got a mom and pop store. But when you've got 10, 15, 20 mom and pop stores, you're trying to control them, then you need a system to control all of those. But where everybody's got the idea that they'll go and reinvent the wheel to implement an ERP system, because I tell a little story, right? Just say, Sean, you and I both start an organization around the same time. You're more successful than me. After a number of years, you buy me out. Okay? Then you go, oh, I didn't really like Paul's processes. If you're smart, you go, well, actually, my processes are not great either, because you set them up with the processes you knew best at the time. So then you go, let's draw back and look at what are the best processes for running this type of business. World-class, best-in-class, you call them what you like, best practices. Now, let's start our new chapter as standard as possible. But you don't want to paint every room in your house vanilla. So let's keep it as good as possible, good enough for now.
Yeah, and I think that echoes whether you're small business or large business, that emphasis on standard operating procedures, consistent processes, because that consistency is what unlocks the consistent results that customers are looking for and want to pay for and receive. So it's very difficult to provide consistent service, consistent results, consistent products with inconsistent processes and inconsistent ways of doing them.
But the interesting thing is, Paul, if we use the analogy, there's no difference between the corner store and Walmart. The operating models are exactly the same. If you're tapping on that QuickBooks, and then tapping on that S/4HANA PCE, general ledger, wherever you go. Manufacturing, whether it's complex, it's the same wherever you go. Inventory is the same wherever you go. It's the same. And you have to question, therefore, why do people struggle? And not talking about the SAP struggle and the struggle to implement, but it's just the fundamental that within lots of large, big organizations, senior folk fundamentally don't understand how our own organisation works. Forget us and what we do. These people just don't understand their own organisation, but they want to take you through huge amounts of change, impacting loads and loads of people, but they don't get their own organisation. And I think that's fundamental.
Yeah. There's a depth of understanding, and it's a rare breed of executive that can go from the ground floor up to the executive suite and back in a single conversation or in a single meeting. And I think the depth of experience at the executive level, where organizations make a habit of hiring from other companies, from other organizations, from other industries, compounds this. And I think this sometimes creates that, hey, Ted, listen, we got a great opportunity for you to go lead this program or lead this upgrade. And then what do the two of you see that turn into, and how sometimes that the specter of ERP failure can come up, but it's not that simple, is it?
It's not, because as that person who's bought from the business to run the program, and very often is bought from IT to run the program, you'll run this project for me, and I need it in 6 months. Then it's going to turn into something beginning with S and ends with show. They're trying to correct all along, trying to fix. It's like going to the casino, right? And throwing, bad money after good. And you're just going to keep on throwing it away because you're chasing your debt, you're chasing your ideal world, but you still don't know what your vision was to get to. Where did you want to get to, right? The box, I say all the time, that turns up. The system works. It's there. It's what you do with it. And if you over-customize it, over-configure it, and that can be done. So based upon business requirements, but also based upon some of the skills of some of the consultants that come in to do it, because they only know their own module.
Yeah.
They don't understand how it all joins together, and that it is joined together. Talking about one client, they only wanted us to do buckets of work, but they didn't realize that we fixed their demand planning and their capacity planning. It's going to affect it down the road in their sales and their procurement, and their warehouse management. And they just couldn't get that. Well, actually, you broke that down there. You haven't broken it because you've given us a specific piece of work. Their partner is trying to say to them, okay, the company you're about to merge with, they've already got S4HANA. And their partner saying, well, let's bring you back to ECC. Hang on, what do you want to do that for? Are you going to stretch it out to give them a 4 or 5, 6 year program? While they sit there and do requirements gathering and look to bend the damn thing backwards. Again, carve it out. S4HANA, Bosch, thank you very much. That'll be as a template, and now we'll bring your ECC up into that. And, the S4HANA you've got today may not be exactly the same as it will be for the whole organization, because we'll bring some more stuff into it. But the whole organization, even the new merged company, they still sell the same set of products. Their processes may be different, slightly, because, to make a milk-based product anywhere in the world is the same. So the output is going to be the same. The logistics supply chain is going to be the same. You've got to get it to the market as quick as possible. You're not making to order. So you are making to order. You're not making to stock. Because you can't, because it's perishable goods.
Yeah.
Right?
Stocking milk for long periods of time usually ends badly, doesn't it?
It's very badly.
I think there's a fundamental problem with all of that. And it's a little bit, and it's called by SAP to start off with. So I always call it the Blade Runner situation. And from the Blade Runner film, they're talking about a replicant, and they basically say it doesn't know what it is. And SAP is sometimes like that, because if SAP isn't tech, SAP is not tech really. It's enabled by tech, but SAP is the best of breed Industry 4.0 target operating model. And S4HANA by country miles the best. It's the target operating model. And Bain, Boston, McKinsey all say it's the best of breed. And all the private equity, as Paul said, says best of breed, because you could just carve out, drop your business onto a functioning, ready-to-go target operating model. It's best of breed. All these big consultancies are saying it's best of breed. SAP fundamentally constantly failed to sell the customer You don't need to play with this. What you're getting is so good. All these big global consultancies say it's brilliant. Just take it as it is and get on with it. But then the fundamental problem is if you did that 20 years ago, it's still the same. So there's a bit about SAP. Every now and again, remember, it's about the target operating model and it's all about the process. So then get distracted by all the shiny tech toys and then go off and pretend they're a tech company again. So there is a problem. These C-suite executives and the tier down below that, they don't understand how their business functions. They don't understand their operating model. And at the same time, SAP don't particularly explain very well what SAP is an operating model. I think that's coming to an end now with SAP investing more and more in enterprise architects, which both myself and Paul are. But you still have this fundamental that organizations don't have enough people within who understand that end-to-end process. So as Paul said, it's cause and effect. You know, when we look at sort of like complex manufacturing, when we're thinking about you need to have the production bomb, you know, you need to be able to set up the material master. You need to be able to do MRP runs so you can do the procurement orders. You know, you need to be able to do the production order and push it down. You need to do the inventory movement. All of those things have cause and effect. You know, it starts off with the sales order over here, all the master data issues. So there's so many dependencies within the SAP sort of like operating model, and no one really gets that. And that's very problematic. And that's one of the reasons it normally falls over at a point in time with an implementation. And I think the other thing is just that piece around obligations. No one really explains to the customer particularly well what they need to bring to the party. You know, SAP, brilliant. SAP's not a problem at all. It works. You could drop. We can implement SAP in a month. We don't have a problem doing that. We can stand it up. But fundamentally, if the business isn't there, if you don't have the leadership, if you don't have the process owners, if you don't have SMEs ready to be there for blueprint and for testing and to check data and sign off data and all those other minutia things, and if you haven't got desk space available and given them laptops and got all their IDs, all those obligations, it falls down. So yep. It's just this. There is just so much to onboard to the customer, and there's never any time to do it. No one's got the capacity or capability to take on what we want to give to them, do they?
And I often find customers are so accustomed to the way that they've been doing it. And I can think of an example of a plant general manager who was so set on, you know, the plant production manager having his big Excel spreadsheet and not trusting that an MRP engine can calculate their requirements when it obviously works for so many other organizations. And it's fundamentally just math. But if the leadership don't trust that the system actually works for all of these other organizations and fights it each step of the way, that is a rapid recipe for, you know, the microwave TV dinner of something that goes sideways. It doesn't taste good, and you wonder why you ate it later, and you wish you hadn't, because if you'd taken just a little bit more time to think it through and make something good, the ingredients would have been better, it would have tasted better, and everybody would have been happier with it. It's scary sometimes, the over-indexing that some organizations have on how special and unique and different they are, when fundamentally they're just like everybody else. And there's a humility in the organization to recognize that what they know that they think is good is actually really quite poor relative to the operating model that SAP has. I love that you were emphasizing the way SAP brings those best practices. Even if it's a marketing term to call it a best practice, it's an operating model, as you said, that works so well. And the humility for an organization to go into an implementation and upgrade to recognize that other organizations that are best, number one in their industry, are probably running that right now, and that works for them, and that they need to be open to that idea, I think is so important. And that humility and the recognition that they're accountable. We touched on this just recently around the ownership and who owns that, because this, I think, is one of the most important ideas. It's very easy for somebody in an organization to say, well, I hired insert big consulting name here because nobody gets fired for or whatever, and they're going to do it for us. But that, to me, is abdication, not ownership. And I know you guys have been called in to clean up for more than one of those Can you share a little bit more about ownership and why that matters so much in making a difference between success and failure?
Right, let me start with that. I'm going to give everybody a break here for a second. When an organization wants to set out on the journey to do an ERP system, as Alisdair said, they don't realize the commitment that's required to do it.
Yeah.
Their people are all busy being busy, right? Now by the way, they've got a business to run. Their business as usual. Now your SI, your partner, comes in, and their business as usual is doing that implementation. So they're running at speed, and the business is back here. The relationship gets frayed, to be the polite word. Everybody starts swearing at each other, and it's all everybody's fault, But then the SI will either slow down, very often not. It's change control, land and expand. We'll give you more people. We'll do the data for you. So we're doing it for you. No one's going to learn if the SI is doing it for you.
Yeah.
We have to do the journey together and show you these are the best practice processes. They're not your best practice processes. They're industry standard best practice processes. Your data. Okay, here's the way the data needs to be. But it's all stemming off your vision, your strategy, your target operating model, then your implementation. And it comes from the phase zero piece of work that we do.
Yeah, I think Paul's right, because I think there's also the bit about the phase zero piece, which we've broken the duck on now in terms of we've got the AI automation in place to enable very, very fast SAP migrations in S4, where literally as part of our phase zero, once we've been in to see the client, 7 to 10 days later, we've actually got a fully configured up and running S4 system. And it's their S4, it's their configuration, it's their steps come across, their simplification, they're all about, and a bit of their data. So we're able to go through and do a day in the life of, a month in the life of. But that's really important, because at that point in time, you can start to have those honest conversations. Because now you understand the total sum of the product to be delivered, you can then have those difficult conversations around how is this going to be broken down and how we're going to deliver it. And with the AI tooling we've now got in terms of the build, the test, and the data migration, we need far less of the business's time now. The business now pop back at critical points in the delivery life cycle rather than having to be available all the time. And I think that's a bit of a sort of significant change. I think the ownership piece is interesting, because we've recently done some work for a really big rail operator. They're a global rail operator. They're a big SAP house, and they're really mature. So IT didn't run the program. Finance owned the program because it's cross-enterprise, but they really owned it. So you had you had all the CFOs in sort of like 40 operating companies, all the CFOs, group CFO. But more importantly, you had engineering involved, because obviously all the trains are linked to SAP and plant maintenance. We've got predictive and preventative, and it had proper end-to-end working. So there's an example of an organisation gone from ECC to S4. They went greenfield S4 as well, because they wanted to get everyone onto one operating model. And it was their choice, so really clean business case, the benefit case. But engineering were there. So engineering owns their bit of the solution. They own that end-to-end piece, that bit about these trains can't leave the station unless SAP says it's okay, or from the depot. And that was really important. So you actually had on board different process owners from different business domains really owning it and really embracing it and really putting in place the best of their people, which is unusual. So when you come across a program like that, it's fantastic, because it becomes an absolute pleasure.
So much of business and life comes down to who, not how, doesn't it? And when organizations put their best who's on the problem and they free them up so that they're not chained to their desk for 7 hours a day, things go a lot better. And I think that makes a beautiful, beautiful example. I know we're running a little short on time. I'm hoping that there might be one quick last question, and that's this idea of what's industry 1.0, 2.0, 2.3, 3.0, 4. What? Can you break that down for folks to make that easier for folks that have heard the term but don't know what it means? It's been misapplied too many times. Can you clear the air for everybody on that?
Industry 1.0 is shoveling coal into a furnace on a locomotive, right? Manual processes. You can only get one person close to the furnace to do that. You could put 10 people around the furnace, but they can't all do the work because there's no space to do it. So it's very, very manual, right?
Yep.
So right to the other end of the scale is Industry 4.0. Everything available to every system, smart robotic process automation, AI, great data, great industry standard business processes. Yeah, all the really good stuff. But now just think about getting from the manual process to the fully automated process. I'm not talking about automated because you want to lose heads. I'm talking about automated so you can have more efficiency and your best people can do smarter stuff, right?
Yeah.
But getting from that Industry 1.0 to Industry 4.0 is a massive leap. And we therefore talk about many organizations are at Industry 2.5 or 3 or 3.5. And 3.5 is still a heck of a jump, but it's a good place to be at. And I challenged somebody the other day talking about Industry 5.0. I'm going, what now? Jeez, give us a break.
Well, whether it's 1, 3, 2.5, or 9, I love that you were able to help clarify that. And I know that anybody watching this will have taken away some really important lessons that will help assure their success. Gents, what's the best way for somebody to find you, to get in touch with you when they know that they need a little bit of fire to help them warm things up and get things back on track?
We're all over LinkedIn. We're all over
Paul.
Hit me up.
Paul's everywhere.
I go to a lot of industry events, and I was walking in London last week, and I was trying to find the event, and like 3 people walked up to me on the street. Well, Paul, it's over there. I'm going like, this is London with like 12 million people, and people are picking me out. I want to be the grey man, but I can't.
Yeah, I love it. I know the feeling. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope anybody that needs help can reach out to you, and that they do. And for everybody watching, this has been another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Thanks, everybody.